Because we're truly managing projects as two separate projects, two very different population sets that are out there. So you had approved that back in December of 2023. We split the project into two pieces. Next slide. So we've been on this project since then, working with Tyler Technologies against this commercial off-the-shelf software as a service model. Tyler Technologies is well known for holding the line, right? We built a package and you'll use the package the way it is. We don't customize to our customers. But one of the things that we discovered as we moved through this project is Arizona has a tendency to run the leading edge of innovation, and many of the features and functions that existed in our legacy system weren't covered here, and that would be a significant hit to productivity if we didn't get those included. So as we worked our way through that, we had a number of conversations with Tyler about what it was going to take. They saw the wisdom of what that was, and I've always held to a position with them that says, I do not want a custom system. I don't want you to take a package, customize it to us, and create for us this legacy nightmare that you won't maintain long-term and will cost us extra money. So the conversation had to twist into these would be things that would be good for the whole. You know, every one of your customers across the nation would benefit from this. This makes good sense. It's good best practices. And for the most part, they've bought into that notion and have been building out their product set to get there. Having recognized most of those were necessary in Maricopa County. 60% of our probationers are in Maricopa County. So that's where the biggest impact was going to be on those. In order to keep the project moving, because it is a software as a service model, which means you pay operational costs from the time you sign the contract forward to get business benefit, we implemented the counties as we went. So we worked our way across the rural counties and implemented all of the rural counties and brought Pima County online, I think by the 1st of February of this year. So we've been gaining business value, learning how the software works and getting everybody on board and moving forward with it. But as we moved through that with this investment model that now was coming into place with Tyler, they were going to make these changes and do what was required to integrate our systems. We need the data to flow tightly back and forth between our case management systems, our pretrial systems, even the jail systems coming in from law enforcement as those people come into the system for us. We needed better integration on it. And again, I stressed, I don't want a custom model, which creates a long-term maintenance problem for us. So Tyler looked at the situation of what they had and agreed to build a standardized integration model that they would put in their product and it would move forward nationwide with it. And as part of that they were going to invest that money to build that out. But clearly all of those things take time to get done. So the Maricopa implementation, which was track 2, as you can see here, was never anticipated that it would be the second one implemented, but it would be the second major endeavor that we engaged in the project. But they should have been implemented by now, by the original contract. With all this work that needed to get done, that wasn't going to happen. So we brought Tyler back to the table with all of the product enhancements that were going to go into the product. It was agreed that we pushed the project schedule out for Maricopa County until July of next year. So in the contract, we have a hard implementation date for them, middle of July next year, where they will move forward on this project. So those are the main changes. So 14 counties functioning and doing well, 1 county waiting, and I would say very much on board. I mean, it isn't like they're reticent about this. They're very much on board with moving forward with this project and getting this done, and are investing a lot of their own internal resources to do that. Next slide. So the project change request coming in, which with what I've just said, is a pushback to get Maricopa live, and then we've always left a tail on this project of close out, make sure everything's cleaned up, final education's done, all of that. So we're pushing the project final closeout to October of 2026. And that will get us implemented with all of the negotiated changes to the system, and get all parts and pieces live on a statewide basis. And this So effectively, the scope of the project remains the same. It's being done in a healthier way than I think was originally anticipated by Tyler when they bid the project. And the budget on this project doesn't change. We're living within that budget because of the investment model that's come in and the vacancy savings that we've had on the project as we worked our way through it. Next slide. So this is the kind of the timeline on the major milestones of the project. As you can see, it is track 2, which is where the changes are. It's now been pushed out to July of 2026, and the project close has been pushed out to October to wrap the whole project up. And you can see that graphically on the next slide, which is the timeline. And that's pretty much the proposal. Next slide is the question and answer session, I guess.
All right, thanks, Carl. We'll open it up for questions from the committee. I may start with one. If you go back to the timeline slide, one question I had was, what is happening in the time period between the initiation of project close, like that July to November timeframe? You know, what's going on in there?
Everything we didn't anticipate happening over the next 12 months. So my guess is there'll be some training activities, there'll be some cleanup, because we're going to put major new functionality in this Maricopa phase. So the other 14 counties are going to all benefit from that, even though these changes weren't vital to them. So all of that new functionality will be being introduced into the system. So there will be probably a sweep back through the counties to train them on the new parts and pieces and all those kind of things. So it's mostly a stabilization phase.
Okay. And I think my other question was, I think you've spoken to it, but I'm going to ask the question kind of for clarification, which is about the original scope and you know, getting to where you are. So were these integration needs included in the original scope, and we'll say agreed to in the contract, but the approach on how to achieve them is really what you negotiated over time? Or did it become apparent that those integration needs hadn't been accounted for and you've had to negotiate that over time?
No, they were always known in the contract. Originally, this RFP was originally written by Gartner Group. Maricopa paid a lot of money to bring Gartner Group in to do a full assessment of what their current system capabilities were and what they needed. And so there was a very comprehensive RFP went out. Tyler reacted to that, but again, as we've seen on so many things, it's a matter of where you stand is how you interpret things.
Sure.
So there were some of those misunderstandings. But the most important thing driving this really came down to Tyler's model of implementing this in the past in other places has been custom one-off integration. So when a county or a state needed something done and tied into their local systems, Tyler always took a very custom model to that, where they did a one-off integration. And so that when we did the RFP, they said, yeah, we've integrated all these kind of things. Our assumption being standard model, their assumption being, sure, we can throw something together for you. So we changed that model, something we think is much more robust.
To achieve a productized approach to integration that is less likely to be negatively impacted by system updates, upgrades, et cetera.
Yes, I'd like to keep this thing for a couple decades. I don't want to have to replace it.
Okay. And then maybe the last comment / question is you pretty much implied that the other 14 counties that have onboarded didn't need the level of integration capabilities, but could benefit from those going forward.
Yes. So Pima had a little bit more integration, but they decided the value of the system was worth moving forward with without the integration, and they're waiting for those pieces to come along.
Oh, okay, good clarification. So some of those integrations they've waited on until this product shows up, and then they'll onboard to that?
They will onboard, yes. And as a matter of fact, we're taking the state standard case management system, AJAX, which we run across 13 of the counties. And we are working on the integration enhancements to that so that when this interface is done, those systems will plug together for the other 13 counties.
Okay, thank you. Eddie, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions. In thinking about the project, I'm thinking about Maricopa probably has the greatest complexity and greatest needs. It seemed like, again, just my perception, that you would have focused on Maricopa's needs or whatever their integration first before the other 14 counties. To tackle that one first, because it seems like all of the other counties would benefit whatever came about. I guess the question I would have with that is, did Maricopa, were they in full agreement with the project, or was there some resistance from Maricopa initially?
No, Maricopa was almost one of the drivers of the project.
Got it. Perfect.
They looked at APETS and said, it's getting old. And we have, one of the things they were driving for at the time, we started this conversation pre-COVID. There was a significant push in Maricopa County to potentially displace the probation officers out of the office, make them all very remote. APETS was not a remote accessible system. It was a much more physical structure, physical network kind of system. And so they needed to move to something with more flexibility and more capability. So they drove that. The reason we implemented the rural county, we discussed whether we should build it all out and then roll it out.
Yep.
Or not. And one of the things that drove that decision really was this software as a service model, which across the industry has this, in my view, kind of crazy approach, which is the day you sign the contract to start working on it, you start paying SaaS fees. And you pay those and whether you implement it or not. So the company's making its SaaS fees as you move along. Well, the best way to get return on investment for that is to get customers actually using it. Since we're paying the SaaS fees, let's bring customers on board, start getting business value out of it. And we've had counties live for 15 months now. The first county came up 15 months ago. And they've gained all that business value. And we've learned many things from that implementation. Maricopa went out and helped us do some of the training and implementation of those counties, to learn how's that system work and how's it going to impact their business processes.
Second question. I've seen Tyler in an industry, for years. My question to you is, we have and seen, over the years, our legislature create new laws, which could affect some of this software. My question is there an agreement that when there is a new law that makes some kind of a change within the system, that Tyler has like 90 days to implement their new component to align with new statute in Arizona? I'd love to hear what their response is.
Yeah, so our contracts always require compliance with legislation. That's part of the whole maintenance support kind of deal. I mean, software service is part of the ongoing service fee. So they are required if the system has to be configurable to support those changes, or they have to do the changes in the system to make it happen. I do not believe we have a 90-day requirement on it, because if you were a software company, you'd be a little hesitant about, I don't know how big your change is going to be. I can't commit to 90
Well,
days.
the reason why I bring this up, because we have this at the assessor's office when we have some new property tax laws or whatever. The company that we're dealing with, we have in agreement that they have to roll this out, because you think about the new laws after sine die is 90 days in some cases, right? And you got to start implementing. So we have in the contract that they literally have to have, these new changes in the system so that we can obviously operate and be in compliance with statute. So again, I just know, Tyler, if there is no time frame, I'm not saying they'll wait a year and you're going to be out of compliance, but I just bring that up, to the team, that might be a concern.
Yeah, and one of the things we do is we, as the legislation's moving through, we are kind of assessing impacts all the time. And we are not shy with going back to the legislature saying we need an extended implementation date on that because of the complexity and whatever to get that done. So, but point well taken. Tyler, in many areas, has a reputation of being reticent to make software enhancements.
Yep. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Eddie. Any other questions from the committee? If there are none, I'll turn it back over to you, Haley.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, ACID is recommending that the change request be approved with the following conditions as presented.
Okay, these are, I think, our standard three. If there's are there any questions or discussion of the conditions? If not, I will take a motion with regard to the project. Oh, and I'll note before I take the motion that I think the courts will be abstaining from voting on this item.
Thanks, Jared. This is Mike. I'll motion to approve.
All right, thank you, Michael. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Eddie. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And noting Mr. Byers' abstention. All right, thank you. That will constitute a unanimous vote. Congratulations, Carl. Keep going.
Thank you.
The end is in sight.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks for the update. Okay, next change request is going to come to us from the Department of Administration on the State Parks Broadband Project.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Bob Mussey. I'm an engagement manager of the Department of Administration. I'm also joined here today by members of the Department of Administration who will introduce themselves shortly, followed by a brief overview of the project change request. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, on May 17th, 2023, ITAC approved the project investment justification to procure the State Parks Broadband Project solution. The goal of the project is to invest in broadband infrastructure, which will provide internet access to state park staff and public Wi-Fi campus, which do not receive service or have limited service areas. The Department of Administration is returning to ITAC for approval on a change request for timeline only to extend the project for an additional year. I will now turn it over to the project team to present additional information regarding the proposed change request and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Bob. Hello, my name is Stephen Jenkins. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Stephen Jenkins, the Director of Network Operations at ADOA. I also have our business sponsors, Suzanne and Linda Colwell from the Parks joining us. If you go to the next slide, please. So the initial project inception was to help bring broadband and public wireless to state parks to help support visitors as they can stay up to 14 days at a time at the parks, able to use them to work through those locations to enjoy their stay, as well as some safety reasons, as some of these parks have little to no cellular connectivity. So bringing Wi-Fi to these parks would definitely enhance their visits as well as provide a safety platform. Next slide, please. There's been 2 change requests so far from the inception of this project. The first one was the initial pilot. We then were able to obtain $20.6 million in ARPA funding and produced a schedule to support up to 18 parks. However, the next change is when some of that funding was reallocated and we were down to $3 million and decided to move on 6 parks that state parks chose that could use the most benefit from the public broadband. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the project overall health is yellow just because of this change, as our initial timeline was to be met by June 30th, 2025. We are asking for an extension all the way through to June 30th of 2026, mainly in part of the permits and requests from the U.S. Forest Services. We have, of the 6 parks total, 4 are live today. The 2 that are remaining is Lake Havasu and Catalina. Catalina, we do have a section of land that is actually part of the U.S. Forest Services. There's 3 telephone poles that we are going to be lashing fiber to, and we'll be driving our vehicles on and need appropriate permits from the U.S. Forest Services. Those permits started back in January. There's been several processes. The latest one we received approval back in May, but they stated that the next approval could take up to 270 days for that final permit approval to go through. We've been hoping to get things wrapped up with them. Unfortunately, we're still waiting. That's the primary aspect, that long extension. However, at Catalina, we've got electrical and Wi-Fi equipment already ordered and on site, ready to deploy as soon as we get the permits and things are ready to go. The lashing the fiber would bring in the 1 gig fiber to that building that can then allow us to proceed with that park. The second park is Lake Havasu. That park, we actually have broadband already into the park. All the electrical work is completed. We ran into a delay for the tower that's being placed in Lake Havasu City. We're seeking approval from Lake Havasu City Council. As we're working through that tower location, the maintenance building, while it's on State Parks property, is adjacent to a hotel. And they're looking to vet through and approve the actual permits, including fall zones for that tower. Mojave County didn't have any specific fall zones related to cell towers, Wi-Fi towers. However, we were able to work with the county members and create fall zones for a 1 foot per 10 feet to provide a safe perimeter in case any equipment falls off the tower, and 1 foot per foot of height, as this is a self-supporting tower. Now, the tower itself is a Rowan 55G tower. Total length is 44 feet. However, 4 feet of that tower is embedded in a 6 by 6 by 4 foot concrete slab with a cross-connecting rebar to help make sure it is not going to fall. But we are definitely working through with the City Council for approval on the plans for this tower. We did change locations just to help guarantee a safer fall zone, and it has taken a little bit of time to get those new engineering drawings done through through Aztec, who is the engineering company who's providing those plans for us. Those plans are scheduled to be delivered to us by the end of July, with approvals then going back to Lake Havasu City within the next month or two. Now, while we are asking for that extension all the way through to June 30th, we will absolutely take action as soon as things move along. As a matter of fact, this morning I did receive an update from State Parks that it looks like U.S. Forest Service is looking for their permit payment, which is great news, means things are moving along. So we'll keep moving with those if this is approved. Next slide, please. Again, the major ask is just a change in the timeline for the final project completion from June 2025 through June 2026. The two risks identified, risk 13 is the U.S. Forest Service. Risk 14 again is at Lake Havasu City Council approval. Next slide, please. Again, overall showing our milestone health as red, because again, looking at these two last parks, the initial plan was to have them completed by June 30th, 2023. Estimated timelines here, just based upon permits and receiving the approvals. Again, however, as soon as things do move forward, we will take action to make things complete as soon as possible. Next slide, please. And here's the timeline. What's not shown on here is Karchner Caverns. That park was actually done earlier this year, but we also have Lost Dutchman, Dead Horse Ranch, Patagonia Lake, all completed. Again, we are working through Lake Havasu and the Catalina timelines. Next slide. Overall, we are still within our budget. We did go back to OSBB and ask for an additional $100,000 for the budget for $3.1 million. That $100,000 actually helped replace all the fiber infrastructure at Karchner, as that was put in 1993, I believe. So that helped replace that, as well as there is 2 add-on locations at Karchner. One to help support their volunteer village, and one to help support their wastewater treatment plant, which required a Wi-Fi connection to operate. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Any questions?
All right, any questions from the committee on this? If there are none, Bob, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Asset is recommending that the change request be approved with the conditions as presented.
All right, unless there are any questions or discussion on the conditions, I will entertain a motion with regard to the project.
Lev here. I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Lev. Do we have a second?
This is Ryan. I'll second.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right, that change request has been approved. Keep carrying on, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
All right. Oh,
No, go ahead, Jared. Sorry.
Hold on, Sean. Next up is Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System with a informational update on the mainframe refactor. Reminder, this is an informational update and not a voting item. Cheyenne, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Cheyenne McFadden, and I am an engagement manager with the Department of Administration. I am joined here today by members of the Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System, otherwise referred to as ACCESS. The team will briefly introduce themselves, then provide the committee with an informational-only update to the overall status of their MES mainframe refactor project. I will now turn it over to ACCESS to begin their presentation.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I am Anthony Flott. I am the CIO for ACCESS, the state's Medicaid agency. I just want to confirm we do not stand up Wi-Fi towers, as Stephen may have indicated in the last presentation. So also, I'm usually joined by Joshua Worley, but he is out on vacation, so I will be covering the finance part. Please bear with me. I am the CIO. So next slide, please. Project introduction. So ACCESS embarked on this project about a year ago with approval from ITAC. The main description of this project is to transform our mainframe, which is our core system, from CA Ideal and Datacom, which are both Broadcom technologies that are locked into the mainframe. They are legacy technologies. They've not had updates in quite some time. Transform from those software packages to more modern tool sets. As part of that, we're returning to provide an update. As part of the ITAC procedure, this project was originally scoped for about 2.5 years, so we are about a year in. Next slide, please. Here is our current project health, and it looks worse than it is, but as with the project this big, we're doing our best to manage. So budget, we have budget currently at yellow. The reason for that is there are some timeline items that we're finding out. The system is about 40 years old. You combine that with regulations that have recently been introduced, and having to adhere to both some of those regulations, which were a lot more burdensome than we expected, while trying to undergo this project, is definitely going to impact both the budget and potentially the schedule. Well, let me rephrase that. Potentially the budget, definitely the schedule. So scheduling, we also have that item as red. I'm going to get to some slides here to really emphasize the upward angle that we've made in the recent weeks, but baseline and validation on a system that most people have not worked on was a lot harder than we anticipated, and it took the team a while to be able to get through the complexity and really ramp up to speed. We've really hit our strides here in the last, I'd say, 9 to 12 weeks, and so we anticipate this getting back on schedule, but as of now, it's still slightly behind. Scope. We are still pending a scope management process. We have one created and reviewed. We just need to get that implemented. And then, of course, the risk and the issues. So the risk, a lot of interdependencies between job screens, data flows. I'm going to kind of summarize this in that we wish we had all of the documentation from 40 years of development. We did not. And so we are finding things that the way we thought it was designed is not how it is designed. And so there's been a little bit of, we'll say, re-engineering on the fly as we're running into those items. And then the sub projects. So, I'll give an example of one of these sub projects. HostBridge. HostBridge is a tool on the mainframe that allows API calls to mainframe screens. And that's how we kind of support some of the technology with web interfaces. All of that has to be transitioned to APIs, right? HostBridge is not something that runs in an open environment in newer tool sets. And so those have to be converted to APIs. And so while we anticipated some of them, like HostBridge, there are other ones that we're finding were built in and kind of set and forget. And you know, you come back to a project of this size 20 years later and you're finding out about them, and we're pivoting on the fly to kind of, you know, okay, let's get through that. Another one would be like a scheduling tool. We use batch jobs for the mainframe. We'll still be doing batch jobs in the new environment. And so what we have to work through a scheduling tool, for example, right? For batch jobs in the new environment. So again, we're saying yellow because we're not sure we've uncovered everything at this point. But as of now, we've been able to identify and kind of keep on track with it. So we're keeping that at yellow. Lastly, issues. The baselines were definitely the hardest part of this. I'm just going to talk about that for a second. We're using an AI tool to do this refactoring process. And part of that AI tool's secret sauce is, if you will, is you have to generate baselines from the old system, feed them into the new system for the AI tool so that it knows what the discrepancies are between what it converted on the new side and what is actually being done on the current side. Again, the complexity of generating that baseline in the old system and getting it into the AI tool and the formatting and the correct, all the correct handling was, again, a little bit more difficult than we anticipated. Well, a lot more difficult than we anticipated. We think we've come through that, but it is key to the project, and it's why we had to spend so much time getting it right. Because as we have gotten that right, you can really see the speed go. And so next slide, please. Again, I have some slides that highlight this. I just wanted to kind of phrase that up. So project status, some high-level accomplishments that have happened over the past year. We have our mainframe exit plan was completed. We have sent it over, completed and approved by Access. We've sent that over to DOA so they can also review and approve or provide feedback on any adjustments we need to make. The refactoring of the IDEO code is actually going extremely well with the AI tool. It is able to do that at a very fast rate, and thus far has been very accurate in its refactoring of the code. Baselines, though, is how, as I mentioned earlier, is how we verify that that is happening correctly. And that has taken us a little time to get up to speed. However, we think we have that solved, and we've been, again, going much faster here in the last about 9 to 10 weeks. And then baseline renovation and validation through the business teams, I'm going to say. So user acceptance testing. So just getting them up to speed on what this new environment looks like, how they will proceed, and what they need to be on the lookout for as we continue through these efforts. Last item, again, more baseline stuff. So the discovery process is the first phase into developing the baselines, right? So again, we don't have all of these systems documented, so it's interviewing the SMEs, the business unit SMEs, and both the IT teams. Since we've done our own development on this system for the past 40 years. They are also SMEs on the development side. We pair them together. We do the discovery on how the process should work. Again, without documentation, that is the only way to really get that. What is this, particular program or function supposed to do? We generate the baseline. We get that in the correct format. We feed the AI tool. We loop it through. So again, some high-level accomplishments. We feel like we've really got that nailed down now. And we're really starting to hit our stride. So next slide, please. Few more items. So these are more on the issue side. We have run into a headcount restriction or headcount cap, we'll say. Originally, when we started this project, we planned on doing a lot of the testing units and some of the other developer teams in-house. We've had to, pivot and do some contracts for that, which took a little time to get people up to speed. Again, I think we're coming out of that, but it did take a little bit of delay in getting everything going, getting all the pieces moving. Next item, the system is very old. And so again, without the correct documentation over the past 3 decades. There were things we did not anticipate that we are finding. It's something to monitor. There's nothing there that is causing us to, that's stopping any part of the project, but it's we find new things on a fairly regular basis that we did not anticipate. And then lastly, I'd mentioned this earlier, federal, I will say both state and federal Medicaid changes. Again, we do our own developments. Part of the reason we're getting off of CAI Deal and Datacom is because we cannot find the talent in those fields to do this work. And so I've been told by some of our very large partners that we may have the most ideal programmers left in the US in terms of teams. So again, when we try to staff up for this, it's not happening. We can't hire 20 new developers who know Ideal, for example, in the next month. They're just not out there in the US. And so as these changes are coming down, we have our developers who are our SMEs working on the mainframe modernization project. If I need to pull them to start implementing these changes, you can see how that's going to slow down my project efforts. Because if they can't be interviewed to create the discovery process, to create the baselines, again, we start slowing down the speed that we've been running at, and that's going to potentially push out the project by however much time we need to do this work. So next slide, please. On the good news, so here's our velocity on the discovery counts. You can see that even as recently as the beginning of the year, we were sitting at well under 400 total discovery items. We've since, you can see as of 5/5, we're well over 1,400. So, I mean, we essentially tripled this year alone the amount we did all of last year. And again, part of that was bringing on those contracts. We had to work through bringing on those contracts to do that work. The other part was getting them up to speed on what an Ideal and Datacom system looked like. And then lastly, it was around the discovery and baseline process that is a little unprecedented for even some of the companies like Accenture who's doing this. They have not done an Ideal and Datacom conversion. And so again, trying to work through what that looks like took a little time, but you can see we're really starting to hit our stride here. Next slide, please. Baseline. So first part is discovery, second part is creating the baseline. So as you saw, the discovery process had a nice upward angle, so has our baseline process. Again, we were under 200 at the beginning of the year. We're well over 1,000 now, and we're again really hitting our stride. If we keep up at this, we should be back on track in a couple months. But again, as I mentioned, there are some things out of our control that may be coming down, so we'll see how we continue to sprint on these items. Next slide, please. All right, I want to make one call out here. The variance amounts for, I believe it is Q2, Q3, and Q4 are off. Thank you, Cheyenne, for pointing that out. My finance team has given me an update. Again, wish Joshua was here to speak to this. He is not. Those variance amounts, we will get them updated, but they are the variance numbers should be lower, and the variance percentages should be a little lower as well. So for FY25, I am being told the variance should be 2.1 million. And for Q2 FY25 should be 2.1 million, and for Q3 FY25 it should be 3.4 million. Again, we will get this updated so the informational items are correct. As of now, we are still within budget, so we'll keep no concerns as of now. If we need to extend for some of the reasons I mentioned earlier, we will of course come back to put in the correct orders and change request. But as of now, we are moving forward as planned. Next slide, please. Current Current timeline. So here's the timeline that we have as of now, with our most recent baseline being just a few months ago. So this is pretty accurate. We'd be looking at a March, April, quote unquote, go live time, of which we need about 6 months of numbers for CMS certification. So that's what that pullout is for the CMS line there at the bottom. So we have to basically maintain both systems for that 6 months while we're running on the new system to prove the outcomes are what we said they would be. Next slide, please. Here are most recent IV&V reports. We get IV&V reports quarterly. We provide these to both DOA and to CMS at the federal level. So key finding number one, resource allocation impacts. We have kind of talked through some of this. I will say that we are adding staff, and we've been I shouldn't say staff, we've been adding resources to try to address some of these shortcomings where we can. And we've made some progress. I believe that we may need to do a little more, but as of now, I believe we are in a good spot. And then risk and issue identifiers. So this was called out. We have a few different projects going on, and they wanted to see a unique identifier between all of the projects, the IV&V did. And so we are updating that. And so the PMO has already got a plan presented to us. We're looking to approve that soon, and then get that implemented so that everybody has a unique identifier, an example of which is shown on the screen there. Next slide. We're at Q&A time. If anybody has any questions, oh, sorry, Mr. Chair, I will throw it back over to you.
Thanks, Anthony. Good review. Any questions from the committee on this? I know he would be excited to answer any financial questions you have. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, well, I do have a financial question, which I don't know if you can answer. When we looked at this project early on, there was a 90% reimbursement rate from the feds, as I recall. My question is, did any of the action that Congress recently took on the Medicare or Medicaid changes affect that reimbursement rate? Do you know?
Thank you, Mr. Byers. No, it did not. So most of the changes that we've reviewed in the HR 1 bill were around programmatic side and not operating expenses. And so they are still funding they call them APDs, advanced planning documents, which are what we need and we use to pull down the money. They are still reviewing and approving those, and we've not seen any impact on that, other than I will say it takes them a little longer than it used to. So
okay, well, good, thanks.
And just for clarification, we do get a 90% match from the feds on this project. That last 10%, usually Arizona bears the brunt by themselves. Being that this system is shared with the state of Hawaii, that is split 5 and 5. So it's actually 5% on the state side.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the committee? All right. Thanks, Anthony. Hope you continue to see that, keep building the hockey stick there. That's a great turnaround. Great to see that progress and that velocity increase. So I'm sure you have, certainly others that are looking at mainframe migrations and modernizations are watching what you're doing. And I'm sure anyone else in the nation that's got Datacom and Ideal will be watching you very closely. All right, that concludes the items we have for presentation to committee today. There were 2 other items that were written only, which you have in the packet for your review. Our next meeting is scheduled for August 18th. So staff will be following up with you to confirm your ability to attend on that date. And with that, I will call our meeting to a close. Thank you all for your time today.